Well, one of the top player agents in the sport of hockey, Gerry Johansson of the Sports Corporation, or TSC, he was born in Swift Current. He played one season for the Broncos in 83-84. They were in the SHL in those days, then two seasons for the Western Hockey League's New Westminster Bruins. He was 6'3", 210, so he contributed 47 points and 464 penalty minutes. The good news is he was drafted by the Montreal Canadiens. Who can beat that? He was an assistant coach for the Tri-City Americans for 3 seasons. Now, of course, he's the president and CEO of the Sports Corporation, representing hockey players from all over the globe, all of North America, all over Europe. There's a long list of star hockey players under his umbrella. One of my favorites, of course, are retired now, Carey Price of the Montreal Canadiens. Others, just to name a few, in alphabetical order, Sebastian Aho of the Carolina Hurricanes, Joel Armia of the LA Kings. Man, I thought Gerry and his group did a great job with that contract. Habs, Kirby Dach, we hope he can win that second center position in Montreal. Hayden Fleury of the Winnipeg Jets. Brendan Gallagher from Montreal. Aiden Hill, the goalie in Vegas. Seth Jarvis from Carolina. Tanner Jeannot, the pride of Estevan. Of course, a former Warrior, got a great 5-year deal with Boston. Some people thought it was one of the best deals any player got in free agency. Josh Morrissey of the Jets, former Moose Jaw Warrior. Braden Point for Tampa Bay, former Pat Sam Steele of the Dallas Stars. Well, the list goes on and on. Gerry's very successful. So, Gerry, welcome to the SportsCage. How did you, I guess you could say, how did you go from being an assistant coach in Tri-City to being the president and CEO of such a huge enterprise?
That's a good question, Don. Plus, good intro. That was impressive. Holy cow. Yeah, you know what it was? I just stopped playing. I was injured. I started coaching and just knew a lot about the Western Hockey League. I was signing contracts and recruiting players. And I was introduced to a fellow named Winter. So Rich founded this company, and he was one of the first guys to bring over Eastern Europeans. So, Frank Musel, I think he brought over from Yugoslavia, of all places at the time, and Dominik Hasek and Chara and Peter Bondra. But he didn't really know anything about Western hot Canadian players. And I knew everything about Western Canadian players and nothing about the agency business. So, hey, it all worked out.
Well, that's great. I mean, you've been so successful. Now, I wanted you on today if we could get you, and we did get you because of NIL. And the NCAA, of course, image and likeness, as well as your name. Of course, the big news: former Medicine Hat Tiger phenom Gavin McKenna goes to Penn State NCAA. Now, it was reported, Gerry, for about $750,000 US. Is that accurate?
I honestly don't know, Don. I know that there is NIL money. That's a big number, but he's obviously a really good player. But I always hesitate to comment on specifics like that if you don't really know. So, but it's sure
right. Well, I guess what we'll go from there is he an exception? Like you just said, he's going to be the number one pick in the next NHL draft. Is he an exception in terms of the money he's going to get, do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think so. It's a lot of money if it's even close to that. It's a lot of money if it's half that, But The NIL money is a new thing for hockey. So this is all, I have to tell you, we're all working on this together. Like we've got guys in North Dakota and Penn State. One of our Jackson Smiths, Columbus's first pick this year, he's going to Penn State. And, the coaches have been great, but I really think we're working together to see how this all actually works out. I mean, I think it's going to be fine, but there's a lot of details that have to get looked after and to make sure we're dotting I's and crossing T's. So this is really, we're on the very, very front edge of this thing. And I think in a couple of years, it'll become more normal. Right. But this sort of happened quickly, and it's happening quickly. So
what was the genesis of this? Was it just the NCAA as a single entity deciding that they're going to allow players from the CHL once they graduate from high school, I guess, to come down? Was it just them, or was there discussions with multi-bodies of the hockey world?
Nope. Just the only thing preventing players from doing this in the past was the NCAA would deem you ineligible if you had a Western Hockey League contract. So even if you signed at like 14 or 15, you could be ineligible. If you played even a few games, you were for sure ineligible.
Mm-hmm.
So they just changed that rule, and the dominoes are starting to fall.
Now, just in the last draft, the one a month or so ago, 32 players, of course, selected. I counted 8 going to the NCAA directly once they qualify for their education, that is, 4 Americans, 4 Canadians. Is that sort of number changed at all from past drafts, or a few more committing to the NCAA versus the CHL, or is it about the same?
Generally, I would say that you're going to probably find more players drafted out of the CHL, because most of the kids, this is with the exception of a late birthday or an early high school graduation, most players are graduating high school after their draft, or right in their draft year. So I think one of the byproducts, more kids will come to the Western Hockey League or the CHL early, as opposed to, because they don't have to worry about their eligibility. So you might see more kids drafted out of the Western Hockey League. The problem will be more good players might leave early and go to school.
Well, that's interesting. Okay. So for small market CHL teams, and of course there's a lot of them across the country in all 3 leagues, they'll maybe this is only going to be in this one case for Medicine Hat, but they get a pretty good finder's fee for a first-round draft pick from the NHL. And, if you go to, this situation in Medicine Hat with McKenna, he's going to be drafted out of Penn State, not Medicine Hat. So would Penn State get all the finder's fee from the NHL, which is really the lifeblood in some cases for very small CHL franchises?
Yeah, I'm not. That's a good question. I'm not sure that NCAA teams get development money. I'm not 100% sure about that. I don't think I could be wrong. Someone will call in and correct me if I'm wrong. But I do think, in Europe, the money for development flows down to several teams. So if you're split it amongst teams, I think one of the things that's going to happen is the CHL is going to have to renegotiate or at least have a better deal or a different deal with the NHL in terms of development money, because they should get some, if not all of it, if they're putting in that kind of work.
Are there any players that are delaying signing a contract right now, some of your younger clients signing an NHL contract right now because of the fact that if you take any money from the NHL, you disqualify yourself from the NCAA? So some people just saying, wait a minute, I'm not going to do anything right now going into the CHL?
Well, you know what it is? Generally, it was interesting. So we had 3 first-round draft picks. So Braden
Congratulations.
Coots from here, he went to Seattle. He loved Seattle. He wasn't going to go to the NCAA. Cole Reshney and Jackson Smith. Cole Reshney went to North Dakota. Jackson to Penn State. But the teams were aware of all this when this was happening. So, I think in terms of if the team, is supportive of a player going to college, they're going to obviously let them play at least 1 year before we get into contract negotiations, But there could be a situation where a team offers a player a contract and he has to decide between signing it now and returning to the Western League or deferring that opportunity a year and playing in college. So your point is well made that is going to be an issue at some point for somebody.
I guess the good news about this is, when you're first starting your career and you're deciding what you're going to do, it's not necessarily for life. Like if you commit to the CHL now as a very young individual, maybe 15 years old or whatever, you might have other options in the prior. I mean, that was where you're going to go for the rest of your junior career. Is that sort of a good thing that you're not sort of pigeonholed for some of your clients that way?
Well, yeah, because forever, we were talking to kids that were 15 years old about not committing to a Western League team if they wanted to go to school. That's pretty young for a player and a family to make a decision like that. So it was always difficult. And the Western League offers you things right away, like you're signing a contract, you're probably getting a jersey, or you might get some games in. So it was really difficult to say no to that. Now I think most players are going to go to the Western League or the CHL because really there's no risk. you know. And the other thing I'll
Right.
tell you, Don, is early on in this process, we had a lot of U Sport players getting offers. That was really the first wave. So we had there's probably 3 or 4 U of A guys. You know, Trevor Wong on U of S is one of our players, and he's going to Nebraska Omaha. So it started out
Oh,
as the
wow.
older graduated players, and now it's moving its way down a little bit to the younger guys.
Well, that's really interesting. So, how much do you think this could affect the junior A and U sports?
Well, it's funny. It's sort of like it affects everybody, right? It's like a ripple effect. But I know the U Sports are changing their eligibility rules themselves, so they're allowing players that have played in minor pro more flexibility to come back to U Sport. You know, and I mean the junior A's leagues, it's different. I mean the BCHL sort of changed quite a bit a couple of years ago. They were, but I do think that the community, like the SJ and the Alberta Junior League, they're going to be fine. It's just going to be it's just going to be a little bit of a different time for a while, and it'll all settle out.
So, a lot of players that might have gone to junior, I know there's a lot of teams that have gone older in junior A for sure. But I guess there's one situation is when the players they don't have to go to junior A. Like say they're a strong player, they can go right to the CHL if they want. Is that right? And is the Western Hockey League and the CHL going to become a league, Gerry, of basically 16, 17, and 18-year-olds?
Yeah, well, your first point is correct. That if you're a good player, why wouldn't you go play in the Western Hockey League? It wouldn't make a lot of sense unless you had a different personal reason, And I will say one thing, Don. Like this, it'll be interesting to see how many kids that go to the NCAA like it, because it's different. I played the NCAA in between Swift Current and New West, and it was great, but it's different. You don't play as many games. You got to go to school. And the Western League model is pretty good. So I do think you're going to see a balancing out here. So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that all the best players are going to head off to the NCAA.
What's really interesting is, could there be, what players in the United States are noticing, and you made the comment earlier that, CHL is going to do very good in the drafts. Is it possible that more younger players from the United States before they go to college will leave the USHL and come up to the CHL?
I think we've seen that already. Yeah, I think that's already happened. And I think that, if I'm a Western League team, I'm getting a little bit more creative in my recruiting. I'm probably broadening the scope of the players that you're looking for, So, I think that's certainly going to be another piece of it.
Now, I mean, in terms of the CHL teams are already talking about improving sort of their product to entice players to come to the CHL. Is that what you're hearing from different teams in the CHL right now? They want to have, improve their facilities, better nutrition, to try to to bring up more of these players that maybe wouldn't have come otherwise?
Yeah, I think that's going to be a natural. I mean, it's just sort of the natural effect of competition, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the Western League and the CHL really haven't had much competition over these years since I was a kid, So I think there's still a good model though. Like most of our players played in the Western Hockey League, and it's a really good development league. Like being on the bus a lot and playing 80, 90 games is a good thing for a lot of our players. Most of the faces on my wall are Western League graduates, so it's not a bad place to play. And the college is different, so you're never going to try and compete directly with college, but you're going to improve your own product to make it better. And I think that's what competition does. It brings out the best. So I can't wait to see how the Western League decides to improve. But I'm still a big fan of the Western League.
Well, like if you take a look at the CHL, of course, 3 different leagues. Do you think this is going to unify the CHL together, make them stronger collectively? I mean, they've already had a few television commercials I've seen during the playoffs talking about the good things in the Western Hockey League, etc.
Yeah, I think, it sort of reminds me when I first started in this business, like the NHL teams kind of ran their own show, and it was sort of, over these years, the NHL itself has it's become more cohesive. Teams are
Hmm.
still independent and they still have their own personality, but they share so much more common ground now. 30 years ago,
Hmm.
a little bit like the Wild West kind of. And I think hopefully you see that in the CHL where they pull together more and do best practices and they share information and they try to help each other out instead of, if I do it better than you, I'm better than you, right?
Hmm.
Instead of saying we raise the bottom for everybody, it's better for me. If that
Well,
makes sense.
as they raise the bottom, as you said, do you have any concern for smaller cities like the Swift Currents and the Moose Jaws going forward in the CHL that they won't be able to have all the benefits that some of the larger markets can to try to entice players?
Yeah, I wouldn't put too much emphasis on how much money it's going to cost. I just think it's just trying to do a better job. And like I said, the fabric of the Western League is really the small towns, Swift Current, Moose Jaw, PA,
It is.
right? And so
Mm-hmm.
that's important. And God forbid I brought up revenue sharing. I don't know if they'd ever bite on that one, but not a terrible
Wow.
idea, But they could also, get a better deal from the national high. There's things that they can do to help the group, right? And again, the better your smaller market teams are, the better your league is. So there's got to be a way to do that. It can't be that
Wow.
complicated.
Revenue sharing, that's almost breaking news.
You know,
Just the
I didn't say
idea,
that.
but no, well, yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting idea to see if that could come in place
Or
because you're
or
exactly right about being strong together.
or
Go ahead.
cost sharing. Cost sharing might be a better way to say it. I mean, there's not a lot of big revenue teams in junior hockey. It's all pretty small revenue, to be fair, But I
Hmm.
do think that you can cost share a bit. I think that's there's ways to do that, but just ways
Yeah.
I would say even more, broadly, just to work together to try to help each other become better, as opposed to the old days. It was a little bit like, if you fail, I succeed, right? It's
Yeah.
if you're bad, that's good for me because I'm good. And the same was like that in the
Yeah.
NHL, and you've seen that change now, where the baseline for all the teams is a lot higher.
So to capsulate all of this, would you say more younger players coming into the CHL that are stronger at a younger age and less older players in the CHL that more of them may move on to the NCAA? Would you say that's fair to sort of predict or not?
I think so, and I also think too, the real opportunity, like if you take out the best players, because the best players always have more options anyway. But if you look
Hmm.
at the bulk of the players, I can see it where most players will finish their 19-year-old year, and then go to college. Because
Yeah.
it's still a pretty good league. It's pretty good to play that much hockey for that long. And then at 20, say you go on to the NCAA and you can sort of go on with your education, and you can have a rebirth of sorts because the NCAA is an older league. So I don't necessarily
Hmm.
think all the best young guys are leaving, but I do think, at some point it's an option for older players. So maybe that's the balance.
A lot of people here in Regina talking about Maddox Schultz. And of course, quite a phenom at this point. I'm sure you agree there, Jerry. And so he's going to be, playing 30 some odd hockey games for the Pats under that new agreement this year. Then he'll be full time Western Hockey League the following season. And everybody's already saying, I mean, will Maddox still be here when he finishes high school? Is that going to sort of hang over some star players in the CHL, do you think?
I think so. I mean, it's people are going to talk about it. I mean, I can tell you about being in this business for a long time. Every decision that gets made is on a very personal one. Like every
Hmm.
player and their families have to come to a decision that's right for them. So it's really, every player we've had, as similar as they might look on their trajectory or what they look like on paper, it's very unique. Their
Yeah.
scenarios. So I know Maddox Schultz family; they're wonderful people. They'll make the smart decision at the right time, and who knows what that is.
Yeah. I mean, how much is it a big factor hometowns because Maddox is from Regina? I mean, yeah, a lot of your clients, are they usually leaning to hometowns or very close to home? or not necessarily?
I would say because the Bantam draft's always a good indicator of that one because, the kids are getting drafted. I would say I'd say over all these years, I'd say 90% of the players will go wherever they're drafted. And there's
Right.
maybe 10% that have probably a 10% that have a really good reason why they don't want to. And there
Right.
are some very reasons, sometimes they're
Oh,
family reasons or personal things that are, that are really important but I would say it's pretty close to 90% of our kids over the years have gone where they're drafted.
now when you say personal reasons, I mean, I guess in your business, you really get to know your clients, don't you? Because they're so varied and they have different feelings and opinions about what they want to do.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, if we're doing our job right, we're basically part of the family. So
Hmm.
and that's really important information for us when you're giving a young family and a player, advice on their hockey career. It's really personal. I can close up the office and walk out the door, but if you're a hockey player, you can't leave the office because you are the
Right.
office. You know.
One last question, because he's a bit polarizing. One of your clients in the NHL is Tanner Jeannot, as a tougher player, a physical player, and like I said, the Sports Corporation did a, can I say, hell of a job with that 5-year deal in Boston. But what's got to get him on this show one of these days. What's Tanner like personally? Because on the ice he's one thing, but what's he like off the ice?
Well, let me tell you, I'm one of the things I'm blessed with is a really good team around me, and our partner in Saskatoon, Michael Kay,
Hmm.
has done a great job with Tanner. So he's Tanner's primary agent. He's been working with Tanner all the way along. He negotiated that contract. He did a fantastic job. I know there was a lot. I was getting a lot of calls on Tanner. I just share him with Mike, but he did a
Yeah.
super job. Everything I've met Tanner a few times and everything I've heard of him is just I know friends of his and we have clients who are friends of his and he's a really, really solid person. So I'm glad he got what he deserved.
Well, he sure gives it his all. There's no doubt about his effort on the ice. Jerry, it's been
100%.
great to have you. You've really filled in a lot of blanks about this whole issue, and I think your main message is, correct me if I'm wrong, is everything's in the end, everything's going to be okay here.
Everything will find its way as it always does. It'll work out.
Right. Thanks a lot, Jerry. Sports.